In this video, we're taking a look at the same book from the same submission that was graded at 3 different grades, 9.8, 9.9, and 10.0. A really unique opportunity to see if we can differentiate between those 3 grades and finally figure out once and for all what separates a 9.8 from a 9.9 from a 10.0. Stay tuned.
Bry's Comics.
Welcome to Bry's Comics. This channel is about pretty much all things comic books with an emphasis on investment and speculation, but we also do a bunch of giveaways every month here on my YouTube. If you subscribe to the channel, comment on this video, and like this video, you're entered to win that giveaway. And if you head over to bryscomics.com and sign up for the newsletter, you're entered to win a free slab over there. Always sending out awesome discount codes and updates on new stock that's constantly arriving at bryscomics.com. And if you head over to my Instagram page, there's also fresh content and a lot of trades. I've been doing a lot of trade deals over on Instagram, so make sure to follow me over there. And lastly, follow me on Whatnot. I do a giveaway every single show, and we have a lot of fun new ways to shop for comics over there on Whatnot. And if you use the link in the description, you get $10 off towards your first purchase. So this video, a really unique situation where I sent in a large number of my store exclusive, and a bunch of them came back at 9.8, 9.9, and 10. So it's a rare opportunity to get to really up close and compare apples to apples and see, why one book was graded 9.9 and a 10 over another. I certainly was surprised at the results. And so before we jump into that and talk about some conclusions and also talk about CBCS and some of their 9.9s and 10s, let's first jump into and compare these books. So here we have the stack of books. We have some 9.8s. We got 2 9.8s, because that's actually all I have left of these, 3 9.9s, and 3 10s. And so we're going to take a closer look at each, starting with the 9.8s. So the first thing to mention about the 9.8s is that there could be other things going on with the book other than just the bindery tears at the top and bottom of the book. There could be slight waviness to the book. There could be, minor scratches and scuffing from the raw books rubbing on each other when they were shipped. Things that you definitely can't see through the plastic case. So you can't ever look at a 9.8 and just look at the corners and say, why isn't this a 9.9? You have to see the book outside of the case under the light to see the entirety of the book. Sometimes you can see just right through the case that there's a little tiny defect up at the top corner that would hold it back from anything higher than a 9.8. And on this one you can see that down at the bottom very corner there is also a tiny little color breaking defect that is common to a 9.8. So here's a 9.8 where that corner looks pretty darn good. I mean, it will definitely rival some of these 9.9s that we're about to look at, but the thing is, like I said, there is definitely a little color breakdown there. So a little tiny one at the top and the bottom for this one. And in addition, there could have been some kind of tiny scuff or something that wasn't color breaking that contributed also to it getting a 9.8. So now we get to the 9.9s and the 10s. And this is where it gets super tricky because in my opinion, there probably can't be anything going on with the rest of the book and have it still get a 9.9. If there's any kind of scuff or anything on the actual book, I would think that would definitely mean that it's a 9.8. So it seems like the only real areas of question are the spine, and in particular with a book like this that's cardstock and definitely not going to really have color break along the actual spine. It's just really the corners that are in question. So this one here, you can see that corner, it's just the tiniest of little color breaks up at the corner, just the tiniest little touch that this thing got there. The same for this corner. It's really almost like nothing's there. It's definitely less pronounced in the corner of the 9.9 than it is in the 9.8, but again, it's just the most minute difference. So here's another 9.9, and as you can see up in that corner, again, just the faintest, ever so slight little tiny ding at the top corner, and the same down at the bottom, ever so slight. And here's the last 9.9, and it's the same story, just ever so slight little tiny little thing up in that corner, and the same down at the bottom. And here's where it gets really confusing. So where we have a 10, and if you look at the corner of this 10, this one actually looks flawless, right? I mean, it is perfect. Definitely less pronounced of any kind of thing from the 9.9s. And here's the other corner of that 10. And as you can see, I mean, it really is basically flawless on this one. Now here's another 10, and this corner up at the top looks pretty darn perfect, and this corner down at the bottom definitely has a little tiny ding. And this is where it gets really confusing for me, is like, if we were to look at these two corners, I mean, the 10 is the one on top and the 9.9 is the one on bottom. I mean, it's very difficult to say that there's actually a difference. In fact, I would say that this one even has a more noticeable little tiny ding in the corner. All right, so here's the last 10, and this one's the most confusing of all. I mean, there is clear as day a color breaking defect up there in the top left corner. So, you know, if that happened after grading, I mean, granted, it is microscopic. I mean, it's super small, but to be able to say that there's a discernible difference between these two books, I can't say that. I can't say with certainty that there's a discernible difference between this 9.9 and this 10. So what's the takeaway from all of this? Well, I certainly am surprised. I thought that there would be a more distinguishable difference between a 9.8, 9.9, and 10, and my end takeaway from it all is that it is actually a negligible difference. Like, you can't say that a 9.9 or a 10 is like, you know, head and shoulders above a 9.8. They're basically the same thing. All right. And at the end of the day, grading is subjective. And also that comes down to 9.9s and 10s. And I think that there is a lot of psychology that goes into the grading process for 9.9s and 10s. For example, regular run-of-the-mill, you know, Marvel books with that cheap paper, graders probably don't even have it in their head to even consider giving it a 9.9 or a 10. It would have to be like a really exceptional batch of books. Maybe they get 25 of them at a time, and one of them stands out as better than another. And so then they go and actually consider, oh, maybe we do give this a 9.9 or 10. So I think there's a lot more psychology that goes into it rather than like objective grading at the time when they get the book. So the psychology carries over to the aftermarket, because obviously a 9.9 and a 10 demands a premium in the aftermarket. But the question that I think we should ask ourselves is, does it really deserve that? And I think that yes, it does deserve somewhat of a premium, but don't get carried away. I saw an Amazing Spider-Man 361 sell at auction for $52,000 in a CGC 9.9. At the time, a 9.8 was going for around $1,000. And I just thought that that was absolutely bananas, because the 9.9 itself had a miswrap, and you can tell at one of the corners that like the corner wasn't perfect, because these books are like almost impossible to keep perfect. They slightly move around in the cases, and that 9.9, if it's shipped to you, there's a really high likelihood that by the time you get it, it's a 9.8 or less because of movement in the case. So to pay a $51,000 premium for a 9.9 on a miswrap book is just beyond me. But I'm not here to judge. If that's something that, you know, appeals to you and you want to collect what you want to collect and pay that kind of money for 9.9, you know, no judgment here, to each their own. However, at a certain point, you are buying the grade and not the book, especially with a situation like that where it has a miswrap. I can almost guarantee you that there are hundreds of 9.8s of Amazing Spider-Man 361 that look better than that 9.9. But because of the psychology behind the grading, for whatever reason, they still got that 9.8. So in my opinion, it's not worth that much of a premium. And really, the only reason it's worth a premium is because it looks better on the wall with the grade 9.9 or 10. And at this point, we are talking about buying the grade and paying a premium for the grade. So it's up to you what you think is a reasonable premium for the grade. But let me be clear, I think that it is way cooler to have a 9.9 or a 10 on the wall, even if it's indistinguishable from a 9.8. Like that 10.0 that I showed that had a little bit of a ding, I would rather have that 10.0 than the same book in a 9.8 if the 9.8 looked better, and I would still pay a premium for that 10 because it got the 10. And there's something to that. CGC is so incredibly difficult to hand out 9, 9s, and 10s. The fact that you actually got it on the label, I believe it demands somewhat of a premium, but I wouldn't get carried away with that. So I want to talk about CBCS a little bit because I've seen a lot of CBCS books come through my shop. There's definitely a higher proportion of 9, 9s, and 10s that come out of CBCS. To get a little example, let's hop into the computer and look at some data for Amazing Spider-Man number 4. So let's take a look at an example of a book and compare the census for CGC and CBCS. We have Amazing Spider-Man number 4. This is where Cindy Moon becomes Silk. And as you can see, there is 5,813 9.8s on the census and 13 9.9s, 7,742 total copies on the census. And if you look at this as a ratio, 13 to 7,742, it's about 0.16%. So about a tenth of 1% of all the books submitted actually get the 9.9. If we go and look at the CBCS census, which, first of all, a little disclaimer, I'm not familiar with the census. I'm not sure, these numbers don't necessarily seem right, but we're just gonna work with what I found here. So here's Amazing Spider-Man number 4, the first appearance and origin of Cindy Moon as Silk, so it's the same book, and we have 2 9.9s, as you can see here, 2 9.9s out of 114 total on the census. Again, that doesn't seem correct, but if we were to just use these numbers here, that would mean that 2% of the cover A's, about 2%, are 9.9s, whereas with the CGC census, it's 0.16%. So the 2% is about 20 times bigger of a number. So it's about 20 times more rare to get a 9.9 from CGC for this book as it is for CBCS. And this is just one example. So we don't have to get like an actual hard evidence number for this about the ratio between CGC and CBCS. It's just enough to say that CBCS has way more 9.9s and 10s than CGC. And if you're around the hobby long enough, you see that. You see that it's way more common to get a 9.9 in CBCS. Now, an interesting thing about this book, a little side note, this is one of the books, the 1 in 10 for this is a variant that was rumored to be part of a very large stash of books obtained through questionable means by someone close to the manufacturing and transportation of comics. And if you look at the actual census, that totally lines up, because if you go over here to the Ramos variant, this is the 1 in 10 incentive, there's 2,190 total copies compared to 7,742 of the cover A. So the incentive should be somewhere around the 700 mark, and it's about triple that. And if you look at the CBCS census for the retailer incentive variant, there's 94 total copies on the census compared to 114. So these are actually almost exactly in line. So there's definitely something fishy about this incentive variant. It's not as rare as it should be. I actually think that CGC should be a little bit more generous with the 9.9s. I have, plenty of examples of a batch of 9.8s come back where some of them are clearly way nicer than other ones, and yet they lump them all into the 9.8 category. However, they've been doing it that way for so many years, it would kind of screw things up if all of a sudden CGC loosened up on their 9.9s. I mean, imagine that guy who bought the Amazing Spider-Man 361 and paid $52,000, and all of a sudden they start getting more generous with them, and there's a whole bunch more 9.9s on the census. So I think that we kind of need to stay with the standards that have been set already. CBCS has been doing their thing for a while, so you can expect to get more 9.9s and 10s out of CBCS. And I think that a CBCS 9.9 is really like an exceptional 9.8. I think that the vast majority of CBCS 9.9s, if submitted to CGC, would get a 9.8. I mean, that's evidenced in the numbers. So, don't go crazy. I think it is, they do still demand a premium, mainly because of how they appear in the case with the grade of 9.9. But at the end of the day, both companies still totally subjective. So just keep it with a grain of salt. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope it shed a little bit of light on the nuance to this very niche part of the hobby. Don't forget to follow me over on Whatnot for giveaways every single show. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, comment on this video, and like this video for your chance to win a slab. And head over to brycecomics.com. Always getting new stock, new inventory over there. Sign up for the newsletter while you're there and get entered to win a free slab each and every month. Thank you as always for sticking with me to the end of the video, and we'll catch you in the next one. Bye.
Bryce Comics.